Well, good morning and welcome. I'd like to welcome our online listeners this morning and then call to order this Planning and Development Committee meeting for Thursday, October the 18th. And our first order of business is a declaration of pecuniary interest, and I'll remind every member of your responsibility to do so. And this morning we have one delegation. It is Mr. Robert Stasko. Mr. Matt Fairley, and he's here with the Hydrogen Business Council. I know he has a number of people with him, so if you didn't mind coming to the mic and you can introduce who's with you, Mr. Fairley.
Yes, thank you,
There's just a little button in the center there. Yeah, there you go. Thank you.
On behalf of our delegation, I'd like to thank the committee for receiving our submission and inviting us to make this presentation this morning. In addition to our submission, we prepared a handout of background materials. You received that this morning. Before beginning my presentation, let me introduce the delegation. My name is Matthew Fairley. Thank you, Chairman. Founder and past Chairman of the Hydrogen Business Council. Robert Stasko, who couldn't be here today, is the current Chairman of the Hydrogen Business Council. With me, I have Ron Obreth with the OCNI, which is the Organization of Canadian Nuclear Industries that represents the supply chain for the nuclear industry, and Sam Sapaya, who's come from Deep River, Chalk River, representing Canadian Nuclear Laboratories. Just a quick word about HBC. Our mission is building hydrogen business communities by bringing together stakeholders, early adopters, and solution providers to build hydrogen energy systems. We work on a community level, and there's evidence of this in things in North Bay and in the city of Mississauga, facilitating information networking events, building government interest through outreach, helping to reduce regulatory hurdles for users, and helping to get projects in the ground. The opportunity to speak today is very timely. Last week, the world's experts reminded us of the urgency to deal with climate change. It's clear that this will be the challenge opportunity of the next century. Though 50 to 100 years is a long business cycle, these timescales are not unfamiliar territory to Bruce County and its stakeholders. Rather than talk about the challenge, though, I want to talk about the opportunity and what this could mean to Bruce County. Clearly, nuclear power and its low emissions and reliability will be a growing part of the solution, but it isn't sufficient. The report coming out of Davos World Economic Forum, authored by major car, energy, and chemical companies, identify one technology, hydrogen energy, that could lead to large-scale decarbonization of transportation and industry, providing energy services not delivered by electricity. More importantly to Bruce County is how hydrogen generated from water and electric power can play a complementary role to nuclear power by providing large-scale seasonal storage. Large-scale storage will be a critical part of central generation systems. In the case of hydrogen energy, an energy storage system that transforms electricity into transportation, fuel, heating fuel, and chemical feedstock. This view is one that's widely supported by the nuclear industry, as seen in the Canadian Nuclear Association Vision 2050. This is referred to in the handout. Industry estimates, and this is the car industry, energy industry, chemical industry, estimates this innovation in the energy sector will be transformative. Driven by achieving emission targets, it will result in some $2.5 trillion in investment in the hydrogen economy and some 30 million jobs in the next 12 years. And we know that that's just a bridge to where we want to go by 2050. Again, the details are given in the references cited in our submission and provided in the handout. This could be a big deal for Bruce County. Bruce County is a community of energy innovators, the home to the largest operating nuclear complex in the world, as well as to large renewable energy assets. which form a key part of Ontario's electricity supply system. The long-term efficiency of this electricity supply system, particularly as it further decarbonizes, will rely on development of large-scale, long-term, even seasonal storage, which many experts agree will be hydrogen. Given the commercial state of the technology, transportation solutions are being developed in every transportation segment by Toyota, Ballard, and Ontario-based Hydrogenics. The time is now to start looking at the adoption of these technologies and development of supporting infrastructure. And I draw your attention to an article that was in the Globe and Mail yesterday in the Drive section. It's a review of the new car that Hyundai has released. It's a purpose-built fuel cell, hydrogen fuel cell vehicle. I actually have a hydrogen fuel cell vehicle. I didn't bring it today, an electric car, but these vehicles are very real on the road. There's 5,000 of them in California. There are 30 fueling stations. There's a growing interest in providing this, particularly in jurisdictions, providing the consumer the option of an electric vehicle which operates not on batteries, but on hydrogen, which can be rapidly refueled, which has range. Vehicle manufacturers are looking range up to 800 or 900 kilometers, which in the heavy-duty sector provides a one-to-one substitution, one-to-one replacement for diesel fuel, and which can operate in those types of applications. I don't want to go into too much detail here, but we'd be happy to we would be happy to provide that on another occasion. If you look at where we're at, when you look at that Globe Drive section, this is the Prius in 1997. That's where we are. And Prius 20 years later, there's millions of those cars on the road. And it's interesting to look at what the Japanese Asian plan is here, because they certainly are leading the commercialization of these technologies. Prius means before. And the car that is in your handout, which there's a brochure for, the Mirai, is the future in Japanese. So this is a long-term plan being executed by probably the world's most successful car company. Bruce County could be the engine of adoption for these technologies. We submit in our white paper, Bruce can be a center of development for the infrastructure and downstream applications. It seems obvious. You have the largest single center of clean energy in North America, producing electricity. How can that link to further development of clean energy in the community? And that can drive economic development. All of this is a huge transformation, and around that, the adaptation of these technologies in the community is going to be a huge business. Our white paper describes the range of potential applications and projects companies in the Bruce County are already working on. Companies in the Bruce are already looking at geological storage of hydrogen. Hydrogen is a gas. In depleted gas wells and cell caverns, similar to what's done for natural gas. So these geological structures can store masses of electrical energy. And when we look at, again, a facility, the facilities, the power assets that you have in Bruce County, this is the solution to the surplus energy, electricity problem. They're also working on advanced infrastructure solutions, including supply systems to Canadian Tire at the distribution centers in Toronto to power fuel cell material handling systems, including installing the largest on-site electrolysis fuel plant in North America. So you got companies that are doing the largest, you've got the largest nuclear complex in North America, you've got companies that are installing the largest hydrogen plants in North America. And this is happening here and now. For the future, the same companies are also developing hydrogen power systems to get northern communities off diesel, which includes working with partners to develop larger scale material handling equipment for mines, and as well as looking at applications such as public transit. And I mentioned City of Mississauga. In addition, these companies are also participating in training for technician programs that are starting in London and North Bay. Further in the future, the hydrogen infrastructure that could be developed in the Bruce could be used to make green ammonia. So this would be producing ammonia from nuclear fuel. It's a fairly straightforward thing. Norwegians were doing this, in fact, earlier in the century. So we could link ammonia production, home heating. That would link the community's clean energy to the county's agricultural community. This can all be scaled up. The ammonia business is big. The nuclear power business is big. This can be scaled to very large sizes very rapidly, and obviously to deal with what we see coming down the road. All of these applications could be demonstrated and developed at scale in the Bruce County. And I can go on and on, but rather than doing that now, I'd like to yield the floor to my colleagues, Ron Oberth and Sam Sapaya, to introduce themselves and their respective states in this initiative, and why now and why Bruce County. Then I'll provide a wrap-up on where we think we should go from here. Thank you. Who wants first bat? Thank you.
Good morning, folks. My name is Sam Sapaya. I've been with Canadian Nuclear Labs, formerly known as AECL, for about 36 years. I'm sure you know AECL and CANDU Power, they're synonymous. AECL or CNL, we've been involved with Bruce for a long time, especially my group. I'm the manager of the chemical engineering branch there. We've been involved with the heavy water production plants at Bruce. When they started up, we helped solve some of the operational problems and things. So we have a long history with Bruce Power. More recently, we've been sort of demonstrating and also sort of offering some new technologies, leading edge technologies in the area of tritium removal, tritium management in CANDU stations, and also for other sort of light water detritiation areas and things. And we've offered these technologies to Bruce for future if they have interest in detritiation plants and things like that. These are really new technologies, and we market them all over the world. As part of the commitment, the CNL is run by a management, a private kind of management, GOCO operation, government-owned, contractor-operated format. They are committed to some initiatives. One of them in the energy area, and one of the main ones is in the hydrogen technologies. Basically, development and demonstration of hydrogen technologies for decarbonization of transport sector. And that is a very important CO2 emitting sector, and it's going to bring a lot of merits to the process. And this also has a lot of implications for not only for rural communities, also for remote communities, off-grid communities and things. So we've been working with some northern communities in Ontario, in basically decarbonizing their energy side. And also Chalk River CNL is very actively involved in the small modular reactors. These are small-scale reactors, can be used for hydrogen production, again in rural areas and also in small communities, both directly to produce hydrogen or off-peak kind of energy availability conditions. Over the last decade or so, we've been working with many Bruce County business partners in many areas, one of them being the hydrogen production area. I think we've helped them, and they've helped us in various ways. Now, currently, we are looking at large-scale hydrogen production requires large-scale storage capabilities. And Bruce County is ideally suited for that kind of large-scale hydrogen production. Large-scale hydrogen production and also large-scale storage. So we are working with some Bruce County business people, identifying these locations and also characterizing them to see how well hydrogen can be stored in these things and what we have to do to store hydrogen. And also Bruce County is very well known for its renewable energy, wind energy and things. We've done a lot of studies. You might have heard of a person called Alistair Miller. He's published a lot of work in basically integrating the renewable energy with nuclear energy. That's an important one. And also the CNL is a world leader in hydrogen safety applications. In fact, some of the hydrogen safety devices installed all over the world in nuclear stations were produced in our labs at Chalk River. These are fairly large applications in France and Korea and China and all these places. So those technologies can also be used for hydrogen, large-scale hydrogen production situations to run these plants safe and things. There's another area that CNL is leading, is in the catalyst processes, and these catalyst technologies can also be used to produce clean ammonia or other clean products from clean hydrogen. And as you know, that clean ammonia will be a very useful thing for agriculture industry. Again, Bruce County is very well known for its agricultural base. So there are a lot of areas that CNL works with Bruce County partners, and we expect to continue that kind of a relationship with them, and we are looking forward to it in the future, and currently and in the future. Thank you.
So I've been hanging around this beautiful county for the last couple of years. I think I've gotten to know most of you. As you may know, OCNI represents 240 suppliers, mainly here in Ontario. And we'd have a couple of mandates. One is obviously to support the major component replacement at Bruce Power. But a second mandate is we want to encourage economic development in this region. And I'm proud to say that we now have about 40 of our member companies have opened up offices here in the region. And as part of our economic development mandate, I personally participated in a couple of Deloitte sessions where they were developing the Project Innovate business plan. And so in looking at that business plan and knowing our colleagues from the Hydrogen Business Council, we actually had a little incubation session at our office in Port Elgin in July, and we started to conceive of what type of undertaking would fit the Deloitte vision for Bruce County, which is job creation, environmental sustainability, research, and economic growth. And so this project appears to be a nice fit with what the broader picture that Deloitte has presented to you. And we've now put a pin on the map and said, I think we can do something specifically in this region. So I think the stars are aligned for Bruce County to capitalize on this unique opportunity. We've brought a strong team led by Hydrogen Business Council, and OCNI sees a direct benefit for some of its member companies, which could be supplying components and participating in this project in a number of ways. So thank you for your time this morning, and we hope to be back later to present some good results. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron and Sam. Okay, wrapping up things, we believe Bruce County can play an instrumental role in the transition to a hydrogen economy, that doing it will play to the strengths in the region and could be a driver for economic development for the next 50 years. Our ask, you ask, well, maybe you didn't ask, but I'll answer. We would request that our members work with the county to develop a plan of action that can be largely paid for by provincial economic development funds, leveraged with grants from the federal agencies such as the Nuclear Innovation and Clean Energy Fund, SDTC, and the Low Carbon Economy Fund. So provincial economic dollars, federal carbon dollars. Federal government has the climate change file. The provincial government is determined to put economic development at the top of their agenda. Interestingly, you know, the Low Carbon Economy Fund, for example, is targeting participation of municipalities less than 100,000. So there are, I think, some special things here for Bruce County. And that what we would do is engage the business in Bruce and really look at early adoption projects, building infrastructure, and developing the businesses around the hydrogen economy. So in closing, we believe that hydrogen can happen in Bruce County. Why don't we make Bruce County the hydrogen capital of Canada? I'll leave that with my final thought, and thank you for your time. Chair permitting, we'd be happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Mr. Fairley. Any questions? Anne?
So you mentioned wind, and so I just wanted you to elaborate a little bit. What does wind have to do with your hydrogen vision?
Well, wind faces the same challenges as nuclear does. It's not a demand, responsive system. It produces energy when it's available. So wind, arguably even more than nuclear, needs energy storage. And so what hydrogen can do is get better utilization of those existing resources. Renewable energy is evolving, but it still has that problem that it can only achieve a certain amount of penetration without energy storage. Arguably, looking at scale, which all of these, when we look at dealing with the decarbonization problem, the argument for nuclear is pretty compelling. We're simply facing a huge challenge to replace fossil fuel energy services 35–40% by 2030 and 90% by 2050. Yeah. So all things will probably come to the mix, but I think there is going to be a renaissance on nuclear energy. It's going to be very important. And the issue is going to be, it's, as you all know, it's on all the time, utilizing that clean energy to the maximum economic advantage.
Thank you for your presentation. It's a very exciting concept and enhancing, making us think about a different direction.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Toulon.
I'm very excited about this. I think we have an opportunity here at the county to be the capital of maybe not even Canada, but maybe North America. So I'm fully supportive of your endeavors, and hopefully OCNI and your group and CNL and HBC can come back with an agreement of some sort that we can support and move your project forward.
We look forward to working with your staff to see how this vision can be realized.
No further questions, and I certainly agree with Mitch. I think it's a great opportunity here for Bruce County and for all of us, because there's you mentioned some big challenges ahead about decarbonizing, and this is one of them I think is going to grow and a great opportunity. So why wouldn't Bruce County be, again, why wouldn't we be an explorer again and be one of the leading people in it? So I encourage you to work closely with our staff as you develop that plan and come back to County Council. I'm sure you'll get a good reception. Thank you both, or thank you all for coming this morning.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, committee.
Okay, thank you, thanks for your time, everybody.
Thanks, Ron.
Good luck in the elections, by the way, those of you who are running. And Mike, good luck in retirement.
So the next item on the agenda is an action item. It's Bruce County Official Plan Amendment number 231-18.06 for Teeswater Concrete, and our planner, John Gent, will present the report.
Thank you. This is a Teeswater Concrete. It's an official plan amendment for an aggregate pit in South Bruce Municipality. I'll be quite brief because you've had this item presented to you before on September the 20th at a public meeting. There were no submissions from the public at that meeting. Just by way of review, it's a 40-hectare site. 27 hectares are actively farmed now. The area of license is that 27 hectares of land, and the approval of the pit requires the official plan amendment to be approved, the zoning amendment to be approved, and that will then lead to the license under the Aggregate Resources Act. The staff report of September 20th identified two issues, which I'll just briefly touch on. One of them was the final slope of the rehabilitated site. It's a 3-to-1 slope, which absorbs about 7 to 9% of the overall agricultural area of the site. We have talked to OMAFRA about that as to whether that represents the restoration of the land to an agricultural condition. And the OMAFRA staff had advised that that is the standard that they have accepted, even though they acknowledge that that does not restore land to a viable agricultural use in that 7 to 9% of the site. The second issue was with respect to the setback from the hazard feature. The official plan requires a 50-meter setback. The proposal is 30 meters. We've talked to the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority, who advised the municipality on environmental matters. They have also indicated acceptance of the 30-meter setback as being acceptable to them. So the conclusion is that we recommend that this application be approved. It's consistent with the official policy statement. It aligns with our official plan, and the amendment 231 should be approved.
Thank you, John. I'll read the recommendation and get it on the floor. Any question? The recommendation is that Bruce County Official Plan Amendment number 231, submitted by Teeswater Concrete, be approved and the necessary bylaw be forwarded to County Council for adoption. A moved by Bob, seconded by David. Any questions of the planner or the motion? All in favor then? That's carried. Thank you. Next items on the agenda are information items, and the first is Rural Economic Development application, and I believe Jill Root's going to present.
Good morning.
Morning.
Yes, thank you. The Rural Economic Development RED application for the Business to Bruce Community Enhancement Project report is for information. Between July 30th and September 28th of this year, the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs held another intake for the Rural Economic Development Program that supports community economic development for rural Ontario. You'll recall that in 2017, we applied for this exact grant. And this was for the Business to Bruce Community Enhancement Project that we have ongoing this year. The funding this year was to onboard Port Elgin, Southampton, Huron-Kinloss, and Walkerton into the program. This application this year will be so that we can work with the communities of Sauble Beach and Paisley to onboard them into the Business to Bruce program. I'll also note that we are hoping to also support Wyerton in their implementation efforts for Business to Bruce. And there is a contribution required from the county. The province matches that contribution. So we have allocated $30,000 into our 2019 budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. Any questions? Ann?
So how many, sorry, I was just wondering, so, so how many municipalities now in Bruce are, is it onboarded, the term
Yes.
you use?
Yes.
Are we close to having everybody on board?
We are, very close. And further on in the agenda, I'll update you on where we are in all of the other communities that we've been working with so far this year. But yes, we are getting close.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions of Jill? Thank you. So the next item on the agenda, and again, it's an information item. It's Land Use Planning Appeal Support Center Interim Guide, and Mark is going to present.
Morning, Mr. Chairman and committee. As we've reported in June, the local planning appeals tribunal has replaced the Ontario Municipal Board. The province also established a local planning appeals support center. And this center provides free services for individuals or groups who are or wish to become engaged in planning matters under the Planning Act. And they've released an interim guide to services and eligibility that describes the services that the center plans to provide and some criteria for eligibility. So the guide shows that there are two main categories of services that the center would provide. The first is information services, which is free information and guidance for all individuals and groups that are interested in understanding or participating in the land use planning and appeal process. The other category is professional services, and that would be free professional planning or legal services related to a development application, a policy amendment, or to support an appeal. They'll be assessing that on a case-by-case basis, and the criteria are to set out how they will evaluate those cases as to whether they would take those on for professional services. So there are 17 criteria, but they're grouped into three main categories. There's looking at the context of the planning application, what are the circumstances of the individual or the group, and what's the nature and extent of the public interest in the matter. So they've asked for some comments and input on their interim guide. We've set out some recommended comments in Appendix B. The two main ones to bring to your attention are, our first thought is that in light of the information service role that municipalities provide in the planning process, our view is that the center should coordinate with municipalities when carrying out its information services function. Our other main comment is that we think that more clarification and specifics are needed about the scope and role of the center when it's providing professional services in advance of municipal council decisions. Particularly, what's going to be the nature of the planning opinions that are provided and the representation and assistance that's provided to the public when they're preparing for public meetings. So that's sort of our main thoughts on it. As far as next steps, we have two recent updates. One is that next steps wise, they're planning to release their final guide in early 2019. And they've reached out to our Director, Kara, to have an interview to discuss their interim guide in more detail. So that will be happening in the next few weeks or so. So that's the extent of my remarks this morning, Mr. Chairman, and our recommendation is to receive for information.
Thank you, Mark. Any questions? Milt?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could you elaborate a little bit on your comment one, item number one?
Sure, through you, Mr. Chairman. The municipalities, both the county and local municipalities, I think we see ourselves as sources of planning information in the community. The public come to us, our offices, our front counters, building departments, the planning department, and we're a source of information about planning in general, as well as the specific applications that might be of interest to people. We see a lot of potential overlap with the center in terms of their service in this area. And so we're thinking there should be some coordination with us. If they're engaged in someone from the public about planning in general in our area, it would be good if we were aware of it, and if they checked with us as to the kinds of information that's being provided to the public.
And go ahead.
Maybe I missed it, but will their sources of information, I'm taking it it's an online service, or out of Toronto, they might have an office, or, and I seems to remember somewhere there was going to be 6 major support centers in the cities or something, or a number in the cities. So if you're in rural Ontario, it would be mainly by email or online services for support. So people will probably still go to their, kind of their first stop will be at our municipal offices anyway. Can you just talk about that for a minute?
Sure, through you, Mr. Chairman. I think that is the case. Services for people here in the rural area will be online, on the phone, and email. And so I think our role as a frontline source of information will continue. I think our concern relates to what happens when they're talking to both sources of information about the same thing.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, go ahead.
Follow-up question. So with regards to information, so you're providing the public information regarding provincial policy and our planning documents, and they would be doing the same thing, right? Providing information on our planning documents. So you're just asking if that be coordinated. Because
Yeah,
it
right.
could be different. That's different. And that's what we talk about all the time, is interpretation of documents. So, yeah.
Say it will be different. It's likely to be. I shouldn't say that. Sorry for interrupting, Mark, but yeah, it's likely to be. I think we've seen that in other instances. I guess this is, to me, I wonder what their role is, for instance, when somebody in the municipal office in London appeals a decision of this approval authority, then what's the role of this body? I think they've got a conflict of how do they, they're funded by the provincial government. I suspect it's a municipal affairs body. Well, invariably it goes to the legal department to change that. But in any case, I wonder what's their role here. Telling us where we're wrong, I suspect that's where it's going to be. I suspect that's where it'll just be. Because, I guess it's kind of new, and I'm sure it'll evolve, but in any case, go ahead.
I just think the night in Port Elgin, Cara, with regards to Mr. Smith here, you caused a lot of his angst, so you you had to be at Mike's affair.
I think we'll move on now. Is there any other questions? Thanks very much. It'll be interesting to see how this evolves. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. So the next item on the agenda is Agricultural Business Retention Expansion Project, and Nicole is going to present.
Good morning. This Agricultural Business Retention and Expansion Project report is for information. You may recall a number of months ago I spoke to you about what was planned, so this is an update on where we've gotten in that time. The project itself is about assessing the state of the existing agriculture sector here in Bruce County, and we've done it in partnership with Simcoe and Grey counties as well. There were 4 phases set out for the project, and we have now commenced phase 3, which is all about sharing the information that we've gathered with the region. So in Bruce County, we had targeted speaking to 80 individuals within the agricultural sector. And what's interesting about this study is that we expanded the sector look so that we could look at the entire food agri value chain. So we spoke to everybody from primary producers to processors and also ag inputs and services. We managed to speak to 71 completed interviews, so there's a typo in your report. It's not a typo, actually. What happened was we had a little bit of a discrepancy in between when we uploaded certain information and when the consultant took it. So I had thought they couldn't get all 71, but they did. So that's a good news story. 80 interviews, as I mentioned, were our original target. That was based on an assumption that we would be able to divvy out 10 per municipality with the support of county staff. Unfortunately, due to municipal capacity issues, only 22 interviews were carried out by municipal economic development staff, and as a result of that, our numbers came down. What's important to know is that this doesn't impact the validity of the survey sample results, and we're very happy with the 71 that we did achieve. There's a summary there for your information of how that was distributed across the county. Our next steps, as I mentioned, are the trends report and summary findings, which will be shared in a series of public meetings beginning in November. The Grey Bruce meeting will be held in Chesley on Thursday, November the 29th. It's an evening meeting. Any of you who are involved in the agricultural sector, I would encourage you to share with your peers because we'd love to see a great turnout of people come and engage with us about what we've learned. For now, I'd like to share a little bit of a sneak peek with you in terms of what we learned and just give you some of the great news stories. So overall, between February and September, 276 businesses were interviewed across that Simcoe Grey Bruce region. We have 7 separate trend reports and then 1 summary report, which we'll be sharing. The most important thing to note is that business owners in the agricultural sector are very positive about continuing to do business, live and work in this region. The primary market for all of these interviewees, 88% of them was local, so we know that there's an opportunity for us to continue to support a local food economy, and there's also an opportunity for us to explore export and international destinations because we know that that's not happening right now in our food agriculture sector. Over half of our interviewed businesses plan to expand, and there's some interest in business supports for innovation, niche market opportunities, and supports to help start and expand food businesses in the area. Huron-Kinloss, and I don't want to steal Jill's thunder because I know she'll be updating on Business to Bruce, but Huron-Kinloss is a great example of where we're already working towards the food economy and looking at that sort of branding work. And what we heard through this survey is that that's an area that people are really interested in. There was a lot of interest expressed in food knowledge around the food economy and sharing at the municipal and county level the benefits of eating local and the brand and how good the food we grow here is. So all positive stuff there. And as I said, I would encourage you to attend and to share news about the 29th of November and that event. That's really it.
Thank you, Nicole. Any questions for Nicole? Sorry. Oh, go ahead, madam.
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's not a question, it's more a comment for committee members since the item of agriculture came up, in case some of you have been contacted in relation to the Federation of Agriculture and the grant program that's administered through Planning and Development, that we have closed that issue and they will be resubmitting for the grant program. They had a miss in their organization and understanding the process. So just so everybody's aware that staff have closed that gap.
Thank you. Any further questions for Anne?
So when you're talking about export, and so I was just trying to kind of get the category, knowing that in Bruce County there's, for soybeans, for example, they're exported to Europe or the East or whatever. So what products were you thinking to develop export market in addition to what is already going for export?
So I suppose what we found was 88% of people said that their primary market was local or regional. So if only 12% of the businesses are exporting soy, as you mentioned, there's an opportunity for us to look at what isn't being exported and do that. We do acknowledge as well that there were some trends that arose in terms of abattoirs and packaging issues and things that people are concerned about, but I think there's a real opportunity for us to look at the value add pieces. So processing, for example, is it sauces, is it local jams and things that are doing really, really well in this close local area, but they haven't begun to think about exporting, and it's those types of products that we see the opportunity for.
Yeah, so I think we had a local company, I'm not sure they got to the stage of exporting, but honey, for example.
Great example.
To the east, China or wherever.
Yeah, I think there's huge potential, and what we've heard is that our growers and our agri-food producers certainly have the interest, but they express the same concerns that all entrepreneurs do, that in that, you know, they're the producer and they're their marketing expert and they're their market research expert, and they need a bit of support in terms of how they pull all the pieces together and plan for the future when they're very busy in the today. So how we address that gap is the next stage, and that's the phase 4, where we look at developing our strategy and action plan for the future, but this is a great source of research to give us that grounding and understanding on what the industry itself sees as the challenges.
Yes. Honey maybe wasn't a good example because they've had a few problems the last few years with the bees, but before that, that was the thrust, was to get to the export. Okay, thanks.
David?
When you talked about rural business, my question is, did you include, or do you talk, or have you talked to business suppliers?
Yes.
Ag suppliers as well as producers?
Yep. So we had, I want to say, 7 categories, and just so I don't misdefine them. Agricultural inputs and services, primary producers, agri-food processing, distributors and wholesalers, retailing, and consumption. And consumption would cover restaurants, for example. So in my experience doing the interviews, I met with everybody from sales and support of tractors to vegetable producers. It was a very, very wide sample of the sector, and I think it gives us a view that we haven't had up until now. We also did an expanded business retention and expansion survey. So it took about, it could be 1 to 2 hours. It was a very in-depth piece that looked at a number of sector content pieces. So we talked about local food. We also talked about tourism. Sorry, I'm struggling for my words. Mechanical engineering and that sort of thing, so that we could really speak to vets and also speak to service providers. So yeah, it was quite lengthy a survey, and I really feel that we've gotten a very diverse set of answers and a really good set of understanding of the whole value chain, rather than strictly looking at primary producers, which was what had been the focus, I think, previously.
Further questions? Rich, sorry.
Just a comment, I think we're on a really good track here, folks, and this is pretty exciting as well, so.
Thank you.
Any further questions, comments? If not, thank you, Nicole. So our next item then is the Business to Bruce onboarding red funding, and Jill Root is going to present.
Yes, hello again. So the Business to Bruce onboarding red funding update is for information. I'm really excited to present this report to you today. To date, in my new role as Economic Development Manager, this has been one of the most exciting projects I've worked on because of its uniqueness and its collaborative nature. And I'll just kind of refresh your memory on how the Business to Bruce functions, and it really is from that collaborative approach where Bruce County's role is to cast the wide net, position the region, build capacity, and create awareness at the broader level, and facilitate and filter opportunities. The county then works in a leadership capacity by administering the overall strategy in collaboration with community partners. The role of the municipality, they are responsible for ensuring the community is ready for business, and selling their community's business brand, managing recruitment tools, and supporting local leaders. And last but not least, and in my mind very important, are the local business leaders. And this group really fosters that open for business culture and acts as ambassadors for the local community. So we can't do this project on our own. It really is collaborative. So the Business to Bruce onboarding process is really about developing strategies and toolkits to support each community's business attraction efforts. So the strategy in essence is really determining what the competitive advantage is in each of our communities. So the process is quite extensive, and we start with a complete situational awareness audit, working with local business leaders, talking to municipal staff, business owners, and whatnot to determine really what that competitive advantage is for the community. Once that's determined, then we develop a community toolkit, which you have samples of each of the community toolkits in your package. So I urge you to take a look at those because they're also very exciting. So it's really, you know, how do we take that strategy and make it happen? And within the toolkits, not only is there a detailed action plan of how we make that happen, but there are also the tools, the artwork, all ready to go to support those moving forward. So I'll just sort of reference now what each community's business strategy is. So in Walkerton, it's inspiring the flow of business. Walkerton is home to its fair share of inventive business leaders, and it's reflective of an even stronger base of businesses throughout Brockton. The community has solid assets in clean water technology and other engineering expertise, successful retailers, and the tourism brand is strong. Building small clusters around these strengths by celebrating our assets and our successes will appeal to like-minded entrepreneurs who understand that how business is conducted and how businesses function are changing. Walkerton is where we're inspiring the new flow of business in a new generation. In Saugeen Shores, we are working with Port Elgin and Southampton. Port Elgin's strategy and positioning is Bruce County's innovation center, so really energizing innovation. So the inventive, pioneering, entrepreneurial spirit is alive and well in Port Elgin, Bruce County. Our strong base of technical smarts and access to inventive thinking in the energy sector ripples out into all sectors of the economy, including tourism, retail, and technology-based services. Equally important, our population is well educated and enjoys a standard of living that is unmatched in rural Ontario. Port Elgin is where we can energize business innovation by coming together and working together for a brighter future. Southampton is embrace your creativity. The business community in Southampton exhibits a creative spirit with great potential to attract and support new entrepreneurs in the artisan, craft, arts, culture sectors. These sectors are not limited by age, nor are they restricted to traditional arts and culture businesses. The more Southampton celebrates and focuses on these sectors, the more it builds a reputation for creativity on the shores of Lake Huron. This, in turn, attracts creative thinkers in business services, arts, education, retail, hospitality, tourism, and even the senior services sector. A growing arts and culture economy works for everyone in Southampton. And then Huron-Kinloss, as Nicole alluded to previously, when we think of Huron-Kinloss, we think about food. And so Huron-Kinloss is the right ingredients for business. Huron-Kinloss economic development strategy is focused on positioning the greater Huron-Kinloss community, 3 villages and areas in between, as a center of fresh food, family farms, added value food processing, and food entrepreneurs. This in turn will attract more visitors, and business for existing entrepreneurs in all sectors, including tourism. So the process, once the strategies and toolkits are developed, the other pieces of the onboarding process include working with the communities to assess conditions that inform the matching tool on the Business to Bruce website. So part of the onboarding is actually getting the communities also onto the Business to Bruce website. So that includes the matching tool. It also includes a video. So we're working in the final production stages of those videos for each community. Those will go onto the website as well. And then those communities are officially onboarded, and then we begin sort of putting those actions into reality. And then, so I also want to call your attention to those communities that have already gone through the process. That is Wyerton, Venture Here, Kincardine is Naturally Enterprising, and you'll remember several years ago, those were the two communities that we piloted the program with in its infancy stages. And then more recently, we've added South Bruce as Ontario's cooperative community. And so in 2019, we hope to then onboard Paisley and Sauble, as mentioned. And that will pretty much get us up to date with most communities. The ones that are still outstanding would be up in northern Bruce Peninsula and a couple in Erin-Elderslie. Have any questions?
Thank you, Jill. Any questions for Jill? Paul, Mr. Warden.
It was interesting where you talked about Port Elgin and Southampton. You've split them into separate communities for this. Why is that rather than a Saugeen Shores approach?
Yeah, so when part of the process is around research, so it's really that situational audit to figure out what's going on in the communities. And while we saw synergies between Port Elgin and Southampton, we really saw a lot of differences as well. So the business strategies, they really speak to entrepreneurs, more of a campaign than an actual sort of brand project. So that's the difference. Whereas if we compare it to Huron-Kinloss, what we saw throughout that municipality really is the food theme, and that's why those are together.
Thank you for that. I'd value your opinion here on where do you think I would best suit in Port Elgin and Southampton? Can you talk about Port Elgin population being very well educated, but in Southampton they have a creative spirit with great potential?
I think you're well suited where you are in downtown Southampton. And I'll give you an example. So Dave Riddell from the Southampton Olive Oil Company, he's got a cottage in Hepworth. And he has a long history with olive oil, but he came to me when I was at the Saugeen Shores Business Enterprise Center, and he was originally looking at Port Elgin to have his business, which was great, but the unique boutique-y style business really is more suited in Southampton, and so he eventually decided to locate in Southampton, and that's an example of how to choose your location.
Anne?
So for Huron-Kinloss and the food related, did you contact the reason I'm curious, because we have the Amish mainly in the municipality of Kincardine, but next door, and there's a bit of overlap with the Mennonite in our community at all. So have we had any contact with the Amish and Mennonite populations?
Absolutely, a lot of contact. And if we could present them in our video, we would.
Yes.
Yes, a lot of conversation. They were very much involved in the strategy design.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I find they're very innovative. And again, I like those 50-acre farms for agricultural innovation down the road. I'm still harping on that. I know it might be a lost cause, but I think it would facilitate innovation if we ever get a chance to express that.
Any further questions for Jill on this? Thank you, Jill.
Thank you.
So our next item on the agenda, again, is an information item. It's the economic impact of tourism study, and Nicole's going to present their report.
All good. Better? This economic impact of tourism report, again, is for information, and this is an update on the project. Again, I would have spoken to you a number of months ago about the plan and what our timeline was, and now we want to let you know where we're at. So the project is comprised of 7 stages, and the first 5 stages of these stages have been completed. The project remains on schedule and within budget, and those final 2 stages are the reporting of our primary research and economic impact analysis. To give you a bit of a reminder of what this project is all about, we have been working to develop a framework for the ongoing assessment and representative analysis of the economic impact of tourism here in Bruce County. You'll know that for the last number of years, we've engaged with BIAs, chambers, local municipalities, all with a view to understanding how many people are coming to Bruce County and what does it mean to our economy. What we're doing here is really trying to formalize that approach in a way that we can present an easily understood insights report at the end of the day for all of you and for all of our owner-operators, and that we can benchmark that and understand year on year what kind of progress are we making and where are there opportunities for us to continue to improve. So the framework integrates data from multiple sources, and there are 3 that can be categorized at a high level as including shared data from partner organizations. We've looked at Ontario Parks data, the National Park data as well, and the Chi-Chi-Mon Ferry have all supplied data around visitor numbers and things like that to inform our model. We've also done an annual survey of regional businesses within the tourism sector and a survey of tourists as well. So within the business surveys, what we did with Prism and Ipsos, who are our consultants on this project, is try to understand how many business responses we needed to have an accurate view of the county as a whole. And then we broke that down by subsector: accommodation, entertainment, food and drink, shopping and transportation, and also by municipality, again, to get that really good understanding of what's happening, both at the sector and subsector level and geographically as well. We understood that we needed about 244 business responses for a 95% accuracy rating. But for a 90% accuracy rating, the number falls to 86. We managed to achieve 170 survey responses, which I'm incredibly proud of, given the time that we were interviewing our local businesses is the time that they are all very busy during our peak season. So we really appreciated the support of the local business economy, and delighted to get sort of such a really strong look at the sector. In the Wonderful World of Tourism surveys, in total, more than 1,100 tourism surveys were collected, and that is split in 2 ways. We had Ipsos do 600 tourist surveys using their panel of Ontarians. What that looks like is that they go out to people who are on their list and that they have the consent to contact, and they speak with people who have visited the area in the past year. At the same time, we had our summer patrol out doing on-the-ground surveys here, so that going forward in future years, we'll be able to in-house that piece, and we'll now have that benchmark to compare what the Ontarian population said and then what the surveys on the ground looked like. So the 600 from Ipsos combined with our 504 visitor surveys locally brought us to just over 1,100 surveys. And we now have the insight and understanding any trends in the differences. So for example, when a survey is conducted on site, you will find that respondents are more positive because it's a person-to-person experience rather than when they're completing something online within a year after their travel. So the data from these 3 components will be used for economic impact analysis and reporting of key performance indicators. And the key objective of that is to be able to, as I've mentioned, efficiently and reliably track changes year on year and over time. Our findings are being consolidated now, and a final report will be presented to all of you and the wider world in this quarter. So by the end of this year, we plan to have everything ready to share, and it's looking pretty good. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Nicole. Any questions of Nicole on I'm sure there will be when, you, go ahead, Janice.
Thanks, Nicole. That's a great report. When you come back with your final, are you going to be able to provide a monetary value of that tourism to each municipality?
That's the goal, yeah.
Okay.
Any further questions? Thank you, Nicole. We look forward to the final report.
Thank you.
So this next item on our agenda then is, again, an information item, and it's the Bridges to More Business event, and Jill Root is going to inform us about it.
Jill, can you just turn on your mic, please? Thanks.
There I am. Yes, so I'd like to call your attention to the media release in your package. As Bruce County hosts Roger Brooks, the destination development expert. So next Tuesday, October 23rd, we have acquired Roger Brooks as our keynote for the Bridges to More Business event. The event will take place at the Southampton Town Hall in Southampton. We're really excited to have Roger Brooks back again. Not only is he a dynamic speaker, but he will present concepts and ideas that business owners can actually take home and implement easily, and I promise you it is easily done, because fortunately, I have experienced Roger's presentation in the past. The last time he did the Bridges event a few years ago, it was a fairly long evening, but people didn't want him to stop talking. They kept saying, one more case study, one more case study. So he's fantastic. So we're really excited that he's coming. So we wanted to make sure that you are all aware of that. In addition, while he's here, he's actually here for 3 days in Bruce County. The first day, the day before the evening event, he's actually meeting with we've assigned time to each of our municipalities. So individual community members, those working on their Spruce the Bruce initiatives, can meet with Roger and go over their action plans and help them come up with new ideas or help them get through struggles that they're currently experiencing. So that'll happen on Tuesday during the day, and then also the next morning will be here in Walkerton, so that all of the municipalities have that opportunity. So we're very excited to have Roger next week.
Thank you, Jill. Any questions on this particular item? Doesn't look like it. Thanks very much. So that's the next item then. That's the end of our agenda. The next item is act on recommendations, and I guess it's that in accordance with procedural bylaws, staff be authorized and directed to give effect to the actions of the Planning and Development Committee in respect of all resolutions passed during the October 18, 2018 meeting. I need a mover and a second. Moved by Milt, seconded by Ann. All in favor? That's carried. So our next meeting will be November the 15th, 2018, and with that I need a motion to adjourn. Milt, Mitch, and Robert, all in favor? We're adjourned. Thank you.